Well, it's that time again, folks. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
And I am Carolyn Nelson.
And we've got a good surprise for you tonight. I think you're going to enjoy it. I have to ask you to leave the phone lines open. Do not call. Do not call. If you do, and I answer the phone, as soon as I find out who it is, I'm going to dump you. So don't even bother, folks. We're expecting an important call from our guest tonight, who won't be calling in until about, maybe between 10 minutes after and 20 minutes after. So please do not call. Do not touch your phones. Do not pass go. Don't collect $200. Make sure you got your pad and pencil by your side, and stand by for some super duper information. And of course, not all of it is good news, because what we're doing really is documenting the fact that our country has gone from underneath us while we sat sleeping. And I know many of you are wondering what it's going to be like in the New World Order. And that ought to give you a little bit of taste. Does that make you want to hear more? Well, if it does, folks, hang on to your chair, because you're going to go for a wild, wild ride.
The sound you hear is dripping blood. This is the start of Black Sunday.
Well, that sets the scene for the coming New World Order. We have a document prepared by the Department of State, summer 1950, number 23, Foreign Affairs Outlines. The United Nations today. The Security Council's rapid and determined action in calling upon member governments of the United Nations to furnish such assistance to the Republic of Korea as may be necessary to repel the armed attack by the communist regime of North Korea and to restore international peace and security in the area is fresh proof of the real capabilities of the United Nations. It belies the impression held by some of the United Nations as a feeble, sleeping giant. But was this impression ever valid? This is a good time to take another look at the United Nations and to ask a few questions. Just what is the United Nations, and what is it doing in the world today? There are many ways of answering. The way most valuable to you will depend upon where you sit and how closely you have been following international affairs. One thing to remember is that the United Nations is mainly a deliberative body. When there is conflict, the United Nations collects facts, studies them, and then recommends courses of action. Its recommendations carry real weight, for the member nations have obligated themselves to respect them. Even more important, perhaps, United Nations action is backed by the great moral force of world opinion, which no nation dares ignore. And finally, as we have now seen in Korea, United Nations action can also be backed by armed force. Remember, this is dated summer 1950. It is a Foreign Affairs Outline, number 23, Building the Peace, prepared by the Department of State. The 59 member states have pledged themselves to try to live up to the high standards of the United Nations Charter. When any state strays too far from those standards, it faces a hostile world opinion. One of the greatest virtues of the United Nations is that the toughest problems of our day are being worked out in an atmosphere of pledged principles where selfish actions stand out clear and sharp and can be pinned directly on the offending nation. This is a great force for agreement. There have been agreements on ways of helping each other, agreements on food and health problems, on transport and communication matters, on tariffs and trade. There has been agreement on more fateful questions, agreement to stop military action if fighting has already begun, or agreement to keep observers at a trouble spot. The United Nations is more than just a useful device or merely a practical way of getting things done. The United Nations of today mirrors the stresses and strains of our world society. It is not perfect. It will become increasingly effective as the sovereign nations who belong to it learn a great deal more about getting along together. The United Nations does represent, however, a long start toward world unity. It is today the means and the main center of action toward a lasting world peace. In the daily work of seeking and finding agreement, the United Nations is growing steadily more useful and efficient. Most of the nations today are finding its facilities and services to be invaluable avenues to agreement and their main available reliance in dealing with the Soviet question. As a result, many of the conflicts and problems which the governments cannot solve readily by their own efforts wind up somewhere in the United Nations system. The proof is visible in the UN workload. Thousands of productive meetings are held each year on hundreds of diverse subjects, and on problems in the economic and social field, many non-member nations and private international organizations may work together with the 59 members under the auspices of the UN or of one of its specialized agencies. Out of this beehive activity, notice the code word there, folks. Out of this beehive activity emerges the truest picture of the United Nations, an intergovernmental organization hard at work helping peoples to help themselves and to help each other, so that all men can eat better, live longer, get about more easily, and enjoy to the fullest their rights and freedoms. And if you buy that, you need a wheelchair of some sort, folks. Make sure that you don't get caught in that little trap they're setting for you. Naturally, the United Nations has not reached its present nature without picking up scars along the way. It has had to make its way in a hard-bitten world in which a few nations still insist on playing the lone wolf. Yet in growing, it has sprouted some unexpected talents. It has developed a toughness and adaptability which have made it a major influence in shaping world events. In 1945, the people of the world, in whose hopes and dreams the United Nations had taken root, had very big plans for their offspring. They looked on it as a quick and easy way to enduring peace. 5 years have passed since then, and a peaceful world still is nowhere in sight. Some people have begun to wonder and to ask questions about the real value of the United Nations. The United Nations' inability to bring off a miraculous ending of the Cold War has obscured its great worth as a world forum. As a focal point of world opinion, and as a central nervous system of the complex world community, everyone needs therefore to take a fresh glance at the United Nations now and then, so as to be able to see its accomplishments as clearly as its limitations. The United Nations was set up above all to eliminate war. Its activities have been along three main lines. 1. Collective security actions, including the peaceful settlement of disputes by the Security Council and the General Assembly, and efforts to set up international disarmament and atomic energy control plans. Now remember, this is written in 1950. I'm going to read that again. Collective security actions, including the peaceful settlement of disputes by the Security Council and the General Assembly, and efforts to set up international disarmament and atomic energy control plans. 2. The building of a more just, lawful, and orderly world society. 3. Work which is directed toward a wider sharing of the good things of life among all peoples and an increase in the abundance of good things. In other words, redistribution of wealth, folks. Take from the haves and give to the have-nots. Take from those who work and produce and create and give to those who do nothing. Socialism and socialists suck. And they're out there sucking somewhere in the world right now, ladies and gentlemen. It might be said, in other words, that the United Nations program is peace through united action, peace through law and order, and peace through well-being. A knowledge of major developments in these lines is necessary for an understanding of the United Nations today. Peace through united action suggests the whole UN idea of nations working together for common goals. More specifically, it might refer to unity of nations in discouraging aggression and in resisting it by force if necessary. Once aggression has been done away with, freedom can flourish as never before. The main United Nations arm of unity against aggression is the Security Council, which is flanked by the United Nations Atomic Energy Commission, the Commission for Conventional Armaments, and the Military Staff Committee. We'll see if this is our guest on the phones now. If it is, you're going to have some revelations here. Good evening. Oh, that's one of our little socialist cutie pies. A little socialist cutie pie sweetie poo who has his little diaper just full of poo-poo, waiting for somebody to come and change it. Mothers, I want you to look around you now. If your little socialist kitty has strayed from your skirt hem, please round him up, for he's fixing to dirty up your floor. They're out there, ladies and gentlemen. Remember I told you that socialists are little children, always have been and always will. That's why they must have a great totalitarian state to take care of them, to feed them and clothe them, to put them in their crib at night and make sure the railing is up so that they cannot roll over and fall out, to change their little poopy diapers whenever they have their little accidents. Oh yes, and they must be watched constantly, for they never, ever grow up. And they constantly, always, and forever prove me right. Don't you, little feller? I love to play with them. And I love it when they try to play with me, for they always slink away with their tail between their legs, their face as red as Rudolph's nose at midnight on Christmas Eve, trying very hard to pull some more lies out of their bag of lies in order to confront facts, for that is the only way that they can do it. The already hard task of this arm of the United Nations was compounded early this year by a Soviet bloc boycott. Although the Soviet Union has now returned to the Security Council, the planning for worldwide regulation and limitation of conventional armaments and the setting up of troop contingents for the Security Council continue to be slowed by Soviet obstruction. Even more serious, the repeated refusals of the Soviet Union to accept the United Nations majority approved plan for atomic energy control have made it rather pointless to continue discussions on that vital problem. Fortunately, these facts are only part of the United Nations story. In areas where the Soviet Union is not immediately involved, the Security Council continues to have real effect. And in areas where the Soviets are involved but cannot exercise a veto, the record of the past 5 years shows that the United Nations can act effectively. In the field of collective security action, where the going has been roughest, there have been major accomplishments. The United Nations Security Council has had dramatic success in the withdrawal of Soviet troops from Iran, in bringing peace to Indonesia and Greece, and in stopping bloodshed in Palestine, and in the Kashmir dispute between India and Pakistan. The Security Council also contributed, it will be remembered, to the ending of the ominous Berlin blockade. The General Assembly has begun to figure large in the settlement of international disputes, partly because of the growing concern and interest of all the United Nations members, and partly because of obstacles put in the way of Security Council action. In the case of conflicts, the Assembly studies, make recommendations, and like the Security Council, may send out special missions to look into the trouble at first hand. Assembly action focuses world attention on conflicts, clarifies the issues, and brings great pressure to bear on wrongdoers. We'll see. Oh, It's our little socialist poo-poo diaper again. You couldn't hear him, folks, but we could. He's a coward. He sits there and punches on his telephone rather than speaking. And Steve will have someone over to your house within about 10 minutes to tie your little hands behind your little back so that it doesn't happen again. Peace through law and order. This is a great cry of the socialists. Peace through law and order. As another basic United Nations objective, only an orderly society can be a peaceful society. Under the United Nations, there emerges steadily a growing body of law and legal precedent approved and accepted by almost all nations. The growth of international law is bound, of course, to be slow. It involves a compromise between legal systems as diverse as those of Mexico and Russia, Egypt and Denmark. Or Iceland and India. Nevertheless, this United Nations program will form a growing foundation for a world rule of law under which nations will bring their disputes to established courts of justice just as individuals do today. Now understand, folks, if these little poo-poo potty britches socialists get their way, we won't have any sovereignty. In other words, the law will be the law of the world, the law of the United Nations. If you commit a crime in the United States, you could be taken to Denmark to be tried by who knows who, and who knows what kind of penalty you would be handed out for whatever it is that you did wrong. We know that almost anything that you can think of doing in this world is wrong to socialists, especially if they don't control it. And if they do control it, you must conform to their little game. And folks, it is a game, for they are children, but you play their game, you play with very serious consequences. You see, they're spoiled little children, spoiled brats. In fact, if they don't get their way, they kill everybody in sight. Murder. And if you're lucky and they have a need for workers somewhere, they will round you off and take you to a labor camp from which you might be able to escape, although it's doubtful, not too many people ever have, where you will work and slave away the rest of your existence until you die. Unfortunate, but true. The chief judicial organ of the United Nations is the International Court of Justice, Supreme Court of the Nations it might be called. Its 15 eminent judges sit at The Hague, Netherlands, on contentious cases and give advisory opinion on matters such as interpretations of international law and the United Nations Charter. That was in 1950. They're doing much greater things now. And within 5 years, folks, you might find yourself standing in front of their court. The most publicized case thus far is the Corfu Channel case, in which the court awarded England about £840,000. That's almost $2.4 million at that date and time, as compensation following the damaging of 2 British destroyers by mines in Albanian waters. While the court has no enforcement power, the Charter provides for potential action by the Security Council to give effect to the judgments of the court if nations do not of their own will bow to its authority. The United Nations International Law Commission, made up of 15 noted jurists, has the job of encouraging a progressive development of international law. This commission is charged by the General Assembly with giving a consistent shape and form to the growing body of precedents, principles, and accepted procedures. It is now hard at work surveying international law and selecting topics for codification. As a part of its assignment, the Commission is currently drafting a declaration on the rights and duties of states, preparing a code of offenses against the peace and security of mankind, and examining the possibility of establishing an international criminal court. Hello.
This is U.S. West. You have a collect call from
Sheriff Mack.
To accept the charges, press 1 now, or say yes after the tone. To refuse the charges, hang up now.
Yes.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi.
Sheriff Mack, is that you?
Yes, did you want me to call me back, or?
No, this is fine. You're on the air right now.
Okay.
The whole world is out there listening. Sheriff, why don't you give us some background? Where'd you grow up? Who are you? How'd you get to be sheriff?
Well, yeah, that is an interesting story. I was born in St. Louis when my father was there stationed in the FBI, and he later got transferred to his hometown, which is the Gila Valley of Arizona, known as Graham County. My father was born in a small town in Glenbar, and then later was assigned there with the FBI. And I moved to the Gila Valley when I was about 2 or 3 years old, and grew up there and graduated from high school and junior college there, and went on a mission to Latin America, and came home and married a girl from the Gila Valley, and then I went to Brigham Young University, where I pursued some studies, and I also tried to get in the FBI, and that didn't work out, and so I applied at the Provo Police Department, which was a police department I worked for part-time as a cadet while I was putting myself through school, and learned that it was a very good department headed by a very good chief, and I served there as a police officer, as a hostage negotiator, as a Spanish interpreter, as a sergeant, a detective, youth officer, school detective, and undercover narcotics officer, which was a real education in and of itself. And then in 1988, some family and friends from the Gila Valley called me and kept on me a lot about coming home to run for sheriff. So my wife and I talked about it, decided that we would try it, and I moved home in May of 1988 from Provo, just a few months before the election, and campaigned real hard, and was successful in running for sheriff, and was elected in November of 1988, and I was re-elected in November of 1992.
You know, I'm curious, Sheriff Mack, after the Gordon Call case and the Randy Weaver episode and the MOVE group in Philadelphia, and recently the Waco fiasco, do you still harbor desires to be a part of the FBI?
No, not really, and there's some good and bad people in the FBI. As a matter of fact, the deputy director, who was actually the acting director until Mr. Free was appointed, is my cousin, my dad's nephew, and I know he's a good man, and in fact he was the one that was defending the Waco incident before Congress, and I know him really well, and I know he wouldn't do anything intentionally wrong, although I have some very strong opinions about some of those cases myself and how they were mishandled. But at the same time, it's just like our government. Our government is very good the way it was outlined by our founding fathers, but there are some people inside it that have corrupted it. And I would not want to be in the FBI right now, although I do not consider the FBI a bad organization, generally speaking. There are some people in there who take orders from top politicians and have been trained in military fashion that you do not question orders, that you just follow orders blindly, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not. I, for one, will not follow orders from the federal government blindly, and that's why I'm in the situation I'm in right now.
And that's why you're on this show tonight.
Right.
I would remind all of those people who think that they have to follow orders blindly that that's exactly a point that was brought up as no defense in Nuremberg following World War II. Sheriff Mack, we've got just about a minute and a half, and have to take a short break, and then we're going to come back. But real quickly, well, first let me ask you, how long have you been sheriff of Graham County?
I'm going on getting into 6 years right now.
6 years. So you're not a newcomer to being sheriff at all.
No.
And I'm sure you realize that the sheriff is the highest elected official in the county, and in all actuality is the most powerful law enforcement official in the United States.
Yes, I've heard that, but there's a lot of people that will argue with you on that.
They might argue with us, but we're in the process of trying to straighten this country up and take it back and get it back into our hands. They've just about thrown the last vestige of everything that our forefathers set up right into the trash can. And on this program, we've revealed through United States government documentation that the Constitution is subservient to the United Nations Charter. The United Nations Charter has no Bill of Rights, and they are in the process of dissolving sovereign nations and forming a one-world totalitarian socialist government. And we believe, because of the Disarmament Act and the Disarmament Agency and the documents that we've uncovered so far, that things like the Brady Bill and the other legislation that they have implemented and the executive orders that have been signed to limit or restrict the ownership of guns in the United States is a part of disarming the American people so that they will have no armed civil uprising against the destruction, the final destruction, overt destruction of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this very short pause. Well, you know why he wanted to dance with the teenagers? Because Frankenstein was a socialist. And remember, they're all kids, children. That's why they have to have a big daddy to take care of them and make sure that they have work and clothing and food and everything that you can think of. Protection against crime, protection against this, protection against that, protection against rain. And that's what's coming. One of the things that has happened recently, as we all know, and as we've all been concerned about, is the first real infringement from the federal government upon the right to keep and bear arms is the Brady Bill. It's the foot in the door. What did you think when you first heard that, Sheriff Mack?
Well, I was against the Brady Bill from day one, but I never really got into the specifics of the bill until recently when the ATF sent me a copy of their interpretation of the bill. And I also had a meeting with the rest of the sheriffs in the state with some ATF representatives about 2 weeks ago in Phoenix. And after I went over this document that they gave me, it didn't take me long to look at this and see that it was nothing but a pile of crud.
What specifically is in the bill, or not in the bill, because that's right, they wouldn't give you a copy of the bill, would they?
Well, they didn't at first, and I don't know why they didn't. It would seem to me that it would be just as easy to give a copy of a bill as it would the interpretation thereof.
Well, they don't want you to interpret. They want you to do what they say to do.
Well, that was my inclination also, but be that as it may, their interpretation was totally disgusting, and it was totally a violation of the Constitution, a violation of every public official's oath of office, and it was something that I determined at the time that I could have no part of.
It also violates the Constitution of the state of Arizona, is that correct?
Absolutely. The Constitution of the state of Arizona in Section 26, entitled Bearing Arms, states that the individual citizen's right to defend himself or the state of Arizona by way of maintaining arms shall not be impaired. Now, it didn't say infringed, but it said impaired. I believe infringed and impaired are synonymous and mean about the same thing, but it doesn't seem like politicians read the same dictionary I read.
That's true, and it's obvious that they don't really read the second article and amendment, which clearly states that a militia being necessary to a free state, which means it clearly says that you can't have a free state unless you have a militia.
Right.
And then it goes on to say the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, because the law itself defines the militia as every able-bodied man or boy between the ages of 17 and 43.
Right. And that is also in the U.S. Code, Code 10, and I can't remember the other section on that, but you're right, it does define the militia as being the people.
Also, I believe it was in 1981, the United States Senate passed a resolution declaring that the National Guard or any part of the military is not the militia.
That's true.
and they declared that the militia is the body of the whole people. So, in light of that, how can they expect anyone to enforce this Brady bill?
Well, that's my concern too. It seems like there's just too many chiefs and mayors, city councils that aren't addressing the real issue here. And the real issue here, first and foremost, is that the Constitution does not leave this open to debate. It is quite clear that you cannot infringe upon these rights. And how a person that has sworn an oath in the name of God to uphold and defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and then say that it's okay to have gun control and that we should have gun control laws. It's absolutely flabbergasting to me that a person that has sworn such an oath could go back on it, or could be ignorant enough to go back on it. Whether it's malicious intent or ignorance, either way, it's destructive.
That's true. And the only truly legal way to take the guns out of the hands of the American people is to repeal the Second Article and Amendment of the Constitution.
Exactly. That has to be addressed before you can pursue any law. The Second Amendment would have to be stricken or changed.
That's correct. Were you aware that Mr. Owens of New York has introduced a resolution in the House to repeal the Second Article and Amendment?
No, I'm not aware of that, but I certainly wish him all the bad luck in the world.
I love the way you put it. Sheriff Mack, what do the people in your county think about this?
Well,
this law first, and then we'll talk about what you're going to do about it.
I'm a little uncertain on that. I think a good measuring stick, though, is how well Proposition 200 did in Arizona. And for your listeners, Proposition 200 was a bill, it wasn't a bill. It was a
referendum.
Yeah, referendum in the state of Arizona that went before the vote of the people in last election when I was re-elected, and it basically stated that steel jaw traps could not be used, but it also outlawed all trapping of all animals and all lethal means to kill animals, which means if you interpret that, what it did, it left it totally for interpretation to the courts.
And we know what the interpretation would have been by reading the past rulings on the definition of the word lethal and the definition of the word weapon. It would have completely made illegal any killing of any animal within the state of Arizona. What happened on that referendum? I know, but
it lost. It lost in just an enormous landslide, almost 80% to 20%, and mainly the main emphasis of that loss was because people in Arizona were fearful that this was the beginning of gun control. And this referendum was defeated about by the same percentage, 80 to 85% to 15 to 20% in our county of Graham. So I can only take that as a clear message sent by the people from Arizona and Graham County that no gun control would be tolerated. There are some people who are against what I'm doing. They equate violence with guns, and really some of these are good people, and I acknowledge that, and some of them are good friends of mine. However, they are misdirected, and I'd love to sit down and talk with them and tell them, let's just go by the law. Let's just go by what the Constitution says, both of the United States and Arizona. And if we don't like it, then let's try to change it. But in the meantime, we all have to go by it because that's what we've sworn to do.
Well, it seems like all of these people are always carping law. More law this, more law that.
Right.
We need this, or you're not doing that. But when the law doesn't agree with them, then they don't care much about the law. And I have a big problem with them with that, because this country was based upon the law, and the supreme law being the Constitution.
Right.
And we must first follow the Constitution, and no law can be made that conflicts with the Constitution.
Right.
If it does, in legal definition, it is null and void from the date it was passed. It has no effect whatsoever. Sheriff Mack, what do you intend to do?
Well, right now I have contacted a lawyer who works for the NRA, and let me say right this, let me make a disclaimer. I do not belong to the NRA. I have never belonged to the NRA. I am not a hunter. I've never been deer hunting in my life, but I will die for the rights of those who wish to do so. And so I contacted the NRA to ask them if they knew of a way that I could file a lawsuit against the federal government to prove publicly and in the courts that this law was unconstitutional, illegal, and without merit, and that it had no authority to ask me to do anything. The lawyer I spoke to said that I could do it, and that they were glad to hear from me, and that they would get the paperwork rolling and do it for me for free. However, he did say that I would need to contact a lawyer in the state of Arizona who could do the actual legwork of taking the paperwork to the federal court for me.
Right.
And so I now have a lawyer from Tucson who is helping me also, and I am going to need, and I might as well announce this at this time, I am going to need private donations for this cause, for the legal fees, and I'm fully prepared to take this all the way to the Supreme Court if I have to. I don't think it'll go that far because I think anyone will see that it's a ridiculous law, and I think it'll be easy to defeat. But you never know. The way our present court systems have been going lately, you just never know what's going to happen. So anyway, I have informed the county where I reside that I will not use taxpayer dollars to fight this fight. And so I am requesting that if anybody would like to help in this fight, that they send donations, either cash or check, to the Graham County Sheriff's Office in care of Sheriff Richard Mack. The address is 523 10th Avenue, 10 Avenue, 523 10th Avenue, Safford, Safford, Arizona, 85546.
Repeat that one more time, Sheriff Mack, so everybody can get that. You're going to get a flood of donations from this radio audience. I hope you're prepared for that.
Well, I need them, quite honestly, and I hope that happens. And let me thank everybody beforehand. Again, the address is Sheriff Richard Mack, Graham County Sheriff's Office. In fact, if you just send it to Graham County Sheriff's Office in Safford, Arizona, it'll get there. But the street address is 523 10th Avenue, Safford, Arizona, 85546.
Okay, folks, you heard that, and I'm going to set an example. Sheriff Mack, you're going to get a check for $100 from me and Carolyn and Annie and Pooh, and I want every family out there in the listening audience to send $100 to Sheriff Mack, because I'm telling you right now, the way these federal courts work is that they will rule against this, hoping that, as most people do, that they'll just quit and go away. But if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, they will have to uphold the second article and amendment to the Constitution, because they can do nothing else. The reason the federal courts do that is most people don't have the money or the time, and also they get scared sometimes, they get intimidated, and they won't appeal as high as they should, and therefore they lose, when if they just would have stuck it for the golden mile, they would have won their case.
That's another thing that scares me, is that they are appointed by some of the legislators and people who enacted this bill.
Yes.
That does worry me. However, if we do not win, and I will consult with legal counsel as to whether or not I can simply just right off the bat just ignore the law, and that definitely is an option I am considering.
Well, actually, if it's a federal law, how can they require a county sheriff to enforce it?
Exactly. It doesn't apply to me because I don't work for the federal government. I'm not a federal agent.
And you have no jurisdiction over federal property or federal buildings or federal land or federal territories.
Right, and they have none over me, and they can't tell me what to do. As a matter of fact, if they set this precedent, then it would enable any county government or state government for that matter, but for instance, this is what I compare it to. It would be like the county of Graham making a law that would require the police departments within the county to work now for Graham County. They should enact a law saying that for instance, in my county, there would be 3 other police departments in my county besides the sheriff's office. Well, Graham County supervisor should now enact a law saying that all other police officers within the county of the other cities will now have to enforce county law and have to help the sheriff in all his duties. And boy, I'll tell you, that would really raise a lot of stink. But the county of Graham cannot order these other jurisdictions to do their bidding. Just as the federal government cannot order sheriffs throughout the country to do their bidding. And even if they did pass this law and say, okay, we're going to send in ATF and FBI to enforce this law, it still would not be lawful.
Well, I also think that you would find yourself backed up by the full force of the unorganized militia of the state of Arizona, which, contrary to popular belief, exists, is strong, and is ready and willing to protect and defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
And I think you're exactly correct.
Well, Sheriff Mack, I want to tell you, I and many other people out there look at you as one of the true leaders and heroes that are emerging during these times when we need people that can help the sheeple, as I call them, get their heads screwed on straight and figure out which way to go.
Well, that was, if I am, it was quite by accident, and I didn't mean for all this to happen. I thought this would stay within Graham County. I was on a radio talk show in my county, and the show host, news director, interviewed me about this last Monday morning, and I just simply said that this bill was absolutely an abomination, and told him why, and read some of the parts from it. And he says, I'm going to put this on the AP wire. And I said, oh, okay. And I didn't think it would mean anything to anybody, really. I just felt I was doing what every sheriff should be doing in the nation.
Well, that's exactly what you are doing. But the fact that you're not just shows how far down we've sunk and how bad the situation really is. That a person who really is doing his job is doing something so extraordinary. It doesn't speak well of the American people to me.
Well, I think it's a matter of just what you said. I think it's most people just don't know. Most of them have not read the Constitution, and the last time any of them studied it was probably in 8th grade at junior high.
Now, you know that John was looking at Susie, and Susie was trying to find out if he was looking at her without letting him know that, and they didn't care about it then.
That's right. That's right. I couldn't really remember anything about it. I actually started studying the Constitution as a police officer in Utah in about 1985, and I attended a seminar that was approved by the Law Enforcement Council in the state of Utah, and the name of the training was Constitutional Studies for Police Officers, and it was one of the best classes I've ever been to. The instructor was W. Cleon Skousen, who I'm sure you're aware of, and he taught a 2-day course just to police officers about the Constitution, not case law, which can and cannot be part of the Constitution sometimes, but it was just about learning about the Constitution, the thing we said that we swore an oath to uphold and defend. And I was absolutely amazed about the simplicity of it, and how easy it is to understand, and what a beautiful, beautiful document it was. And what I was even more impressed with is that the instructor showed us the miraculous nature by which it was founded in the first place. And at that time, I became a true convert to the historical perspective and to the value of the Constitution, and how absolutely valuable it is to our country and to our freedoms and our liberties. And I will never do anything intentionally to violate that document.
Well, that's wonderful. All Americans really should feel that way.
Every police officer.
Absolutely. I am just amazed at the police officers across this country who are violating the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments known as the Bill of Rights, on a daily basis, bashing down doors without warrants, denying the freedom of speech. I could go on and on and on and on, because literally, and this is the truth, in the law today, the Bill of Rights does not exist. And you get no justice in court. What you get is just us, and the us is not anybody listening to this broadcast, I can guarantee you. No one in the history of the world was ever free until our forefathers penned the Constitution and the Bill of Rights of the United States of America. And we are the only people who have ever existed on the face of this earth who have truly been free. And even now that we're losing our rights, we still have more freedom than any other people living upon the face of this earth.
Yeah, isn't that sad?
It certainly is. Folks, we have taken down Sheriff Mack's address, so if you didn't get it, call us at 602-333-5174. That's 602-333-5174, and the number will be repeated at the end of this program, and Sheriff Mack will be our guest again at the later program at 9 Pacific, 10 Mountain, 11 Central, and midnight Eastern Standard Time. Sheriff Mack, thank you very much for being our guest during this hour, and we'll see you later.
Okay.
Good night, folks, and God bless you all. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. During the early portion of the Hour of the Time this evening, which was heard by everybody, all of our listeners on the East Coast and around the world, we had a guest who has decided to draw the line exactly where it should be drawn, right on the doorstep of the Constitution of the United States of America. Either it exists and it's real, or it has been subverted and, in fact, has been replaced by the United Nations Charter, or we're going to find out just exactly what the status is. As the events that have taken place recently have upset so many Americans, one man has decided to challenge the system and bring it all into focus. And we're going to be talking with him in just a few minutes. Make sure you have pen and paper by your side, and make sure you have a clear head and you're ready to hear some truth. From the beginning of this great nation, the men who have been involved with its founding and with protecting it all these years have been rugged individualists who were not afraid to take on whatever establishment, whatever organization, or whoever challenged those ideals and those principles upon which this country was built. I have on the other end of this telephone line here a man who has certainly filled the shoes that were left, that all of us should be occupying, but in reality only a very few ever step out to do what is needed, what is necessary in time of trouble, in time of need, in time of challenge. It's not easy. It never has been. If you look back through the history of the United States of America, you'll see that our founding fathers were actually traitors to the country that they opposed. The men who followed were ragtag frontiersmen who didn't have much but built a nation. We sent men off to fight in various wars. Many of them never returned, and for the most part, nobody knows most of their names. But they were all willing to stand, take that stand, draw the line, and take on all comers, simply so that the rest of us could enjoy the fruits that this nation produces. What are they? How many of you really realize that in the entire history of the world, no man or woman had ever stood free on the face of this earth until our Constitution and Bill of Rights were penned by the hearts and minds of our founding fathers. Everyone was owned by a sultan, an emir, a king, a queen. Some despot somewhere has always claimed ownership of everything, including their subjects, their people, until this nation was founded. And even today, folks, even faced with the loss of our freedoms and those that we have already seen fly out the window, and I'm talking about the entire Bill of Rights, and I can prove that statement, we are still the freest people on the face of this earth with the most opportunity, living in the most affluent country that has ever existed. We have the greatest military might, yet we are slipping backwards in the course of man's evolution, backwards from the penultimate achievement of all mankind striving upon the face of this planet, back into slavery. For if things keep progressing as they are, we will soon be owned once again by someone or some government or some thing. Our special guest tonight is Sheriff Mack of Graham County, Arizona, who has decided to draw the line when he heard about the passage of the Brady Bill. Sheriff Mack, I want to welcome you back for the second hour of the time, and I'd like you to start just where we started before and tell our listening audience who you are and where you came from and how you got to be in the position that you're at, and then we'll go from there.
Hey, thanks, Bill. I apologize again for my voice. I'm losing my voice. I've got a little bit of a sore throat and a cold, but I'll do my best. I grew up in Arizona, in Stafford. Went to school there, and graduated from high school in Stafford, Arizona, a small farming community in southeastern Arizona. I attended junior college there, also a community college, and graduated from there. And then I went and finished my schooling up at Brigham Young University in Utah. And while I was there, I applied for a part-time cadet job at the local police department in Provo, and did that while I was working my way through school. And I graduated, and I moved home for a short time, and then applied as a police officer in Provo City and started work there in 1979. During the next 10 years, I served as a patrol officer, as an undercover narcotics officer, as a sergeant, corporal, front desk sergeant, detective, school officer, youth officer, and vice officer, and hostage negotiator. And in 1988, some friends and family members started calling me and asking me to move home to run for sheriff, and they finally convinced me to try it. And in May of 1988, I moved home, won the primary election in September, and won the general election in November of 1988. And then I was reelected as sheriff in Graham County in November of 1992, and I've just entered my 6th year as sheriff. And I'm married and I have 5 beautiful children, and right now I'm in Phoenix because my son is playing in the state basketball playoffs here for Thatcher High School.
Wonderful. I wish him all the luck. I hope he wins. Sheriff, one thing that I know everybody out there is noticing is that you do not sound at all like the typical portrayal of a county sheriff that people normally would see on television. Why do you think that is?
Well, probably the main reason is because I'm not, I guess. I'm 6'3", weigh about 215. Still quite athletic and involved in sports and the like, and stay very active, working out with my wife. She teaches aerobics, and so I stay pretty healthy that way. And I'm also the youngest sheriff in Arizona. I'm 41 years old.
Well, do you think that there's a conscious effort on the media's part to portray a county sheriff as being some kind of a stupid bimbo Bubba type guy? Well,
that's certainly how they've been portrayed in the news media, and So I think that it kind of goes back to the old Western days. Somebody told me that when I first took over as sheriff that I didn't look very much like a cowboy. So I didn't know you had to be a cowboy in order to be sheriff.
Well, I certainly didn't know either. But in point of fact, a county sheriff is the most powerful law enforcement person in the country. Isn't that true?
Yes, I've been told that. I've never seen anything specifically in writing, and if you have something that documents that, I have read one book, but it basically goes back to common law instead of something that's more concrete for today's skeptics.
Well, I think in our research, in the law of each state, it places the county sheriff in the penultimate position of being the man who really has the power, but very few sheriffs, being as their elected officials, really know the law enough to be able to understand it and apply it as far as their own power goes. Would you argue for or against that?
No, I think you're right, and I think that's accurate and a fair statement. I know that a lot of people do argue it and debate it quite a bit, but I think the reason that the sheriff is such a powerful position is that primarily in performing his duties as a law enforcement officer and the head law enforcement officer of the county is that he only reports to the people who elected him, who are his boss. And in that regard, he is given great latitude and flexibility in what he does.
And I think that's exactly the way law enforcement was supposed to work in this country, along with what's called a fully informed jury that judges not only the facts but the law, so that a rogue legislature could not pass laws that the people would not agree were fair and just in their community.
Exactly, and along that same line, the reason we have juries and the reason we have different assignments and checks and balances and separation of powers is that each entity who has sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution is there to make sure that every step of the way, all the way from the law enforcement officer filing a complaint, all the way down or up to the jury, and through the lawyers and through the judges and through the prosecutors and through every step of the way, that each government entity is making sure that the rights of the citizens are not being violated.
Now, just for the benefit of our listening audience, you're not new to this job, but you're not one of these guys that have been a sheriff forever and thus are exercising some kind of a tyrannical control over your county. How long have you been the sheriff of Graham County?
Just a little over 5 years.
And, I've always picked it or had questions about people who question the authority of a sheriff or a sheriff who's been a sheriff for many, many years, simply because, as you stated earlier, the sheriff is elected by the people, and he could not occupy that office if he did not have the mandate of the people.
Right. That's exactly correct.
So that's extremely important. Now, also people across this country, and I know a lot of people in my radio audience are asking this question because I get a lot of letters about it. They say, Bill, if these law enforcement people are really loyal Americans, how is it that they can violate the Constitution on a daily basis? Now, most people don't know very much about law enforcement, and most people don't know anybody in law enforcement unless they happen to get stopped and get a ticket, or they live next door to somebody. And there are only so many next doors to go around. So, can you talk about the oath that law enforcement people take and what it's supposed to mean and what, in fact, it really does turn out to mean?
Well, I'm one who says if the oath of office doesn't mean anything, well, then let's quit taking the dang thing. But to me, it does mean something, and it's the same oath of office that every public official takes. It's almost the exact same oath of office that the President of the United States takes, wherein he raises his right arm and swears in the name of God that he will uphold and defend the United States Constitution, and in most cases where you're elected in a state or county, they'll say also, it says, uphold and defend the Constitution of the state of Arizona and its bylaws. And then you swear to that in the name of God in front of witnesses and in front of the entire community at times. And to me, when a public official, especially a police officer who is on the front lines of protecting the citizens and their rights, this should be something that is his motto, that it's his mission statement, that it's his banner that he carries with him when he works, and that he will make sure that he is protecting the rights and protecting the sanctity and safeguarding the peace in the community, and making sure that he does everything in his power to make sure that the good common ordinary citizen is being protected and that his rights are never being violated.
I don't know about thickly populated areas of the country, but I know in rural areas the law enforcement official that people know the best and the most is their county sheriff. And since they elected the county sheriff, and he is one of them, and usually has a business in the county somewhere, people are not afraid to go talk to the county sheriff. But if you get into a city or into a state police proposition, I remember when I was a kid, my parents taught me that the police officer was my friend, and that if I ever got in trouble or felt scared or got lost, to go to a police officer.
Right.
Now, I don't know anybody today who's telling their children that anymore, because most people are afraid of the police. Why is that, Sheriff Mack?
Well, I think it's two reasons. And recently, I attended some training that addressed this issue. And the commissioner of New York City was asked a similar question just like this. And he said that one of the biggest problems facing the image of police officers throughout America is that American communities are being patrolled by strangers, and it's very difficult to go to a stranger and ask a stranger for help. And like you alluded to, the county sheriff is in a rural setting, and most people know him, and he is a friend of the people within the community, and they know they can depend on this person. You get into a major city where you have 20,000, 30,000 police officers who don't take the time to get to know the people in their area. You're not going to have a good relationship between the community and the officers, and it's very difficult for them to gain a relationship of trust between each other. And that's why now there is a new emphasis within the law enforcement community in the United States called community policing, where the police officers are being trained in new philosophies and a new idea, if you will, regarding the emphasis of law enforcement, and that is, it's trying to create a relationship between the police and the citizens in order to enforce the law together. And I do support this philosophy, primarily because it does get law enforcement officers off their high horse and get them down into the communities and actually helping people with their problems, and not just out chasing the bad guy.
Okay. I would support that too if I were able to see it at work, but unfortunately I don't see that at work too much. What I see and what I hear, and when we're able to get copies of memos and police training curriculums, what we see is officers being taught that the public is their enemy.
Yeah, especially when they're right out of the academy. We've had a problem with that. Someone in Arizona had some other chiefs talking to me about that also, that when the officers right out of the academy, you know, they're really gung-ho on writing a bunch of tickets and stacking charges. And what I've told my officers is that anytime you have any dealing with people in the community, and after you're finished with them, you better be able to get back into your car or walk away from them saying, I just upheld my oath of office, I just protected the citizen, I just served the public. If you can't say that, then you better go and do what you just did.
Well, that used to be a motto. I can remember when the motto of the police was to protect and serve, and we don't see or hear that anymore.
Well, you still hear it, but it's not it's not what's happening. I'll guarantee you that. And we as police officers need to lead the way in getting back to the basics and getting back to the fundamental principles upon which our job was based in the first place, and that is to protect and serve and to make sure that the rights of the people are being safeguarded.
You know, it's really strange to hear you refer to yourself as we as police officers, because I know myself and no one else that I know of would associate the county sheriff with your standard police officer. There is no comparison, in my estimation, in the way that you deal with people, in the way that you approach people, in the way that people feel about you. And I know that all law enforcement people, just like all engineers and all of any kind of trade, you feel a certain kinship and closeness with each other, and I understand that. And you have to work with each other, and sometimes you have to depend upon each other for your life. But there really is a distinction between the two, and the distinction has quite a gulf between it.
And perhaps that is one other thing we need as a law enforcement community need to change and address. And really, I do know for a fact that there are a lot of major cities, police departments that are going to this new philosophy of community policing. I'm personally familiar and aware that it is happening, and it has encouraged me a great deal, to be honest with you.
Well, that's good. Have you ever thought about maybe getting some police officers out of the city and into the country to ride around with the sheriff's deputies for a while, and where you stop and say hi, hey, you know, how's your new cap and stuff like that?
I suggest that to my officers, but I haven't suggested it to the city officers in our jurisdictions at this point. In our jurisdiction, however, though, the police departments are all very small and really quite rural, and everybody, including the city police departments, pretty much know each other.
What do you think about small cities? And we've got another half hour to go, so we got plenty of time to talk about our main subject, which is coming up right after the break, folks, so don't go away. But what do you think about these real small towns that, for the number of population in the town, they have an inordinate number of police officers patrolling the streets? Is that necessary?
Well, I don't know if it's necessary. It has to know each individual city.
Well, for instance, where I'm at right now, it's a very, very small town, and I'm not going to name the town, but because I don't want to embarrass anybody and make anybody feel bad. But I could go down to the Circle K right after this broadcast, and there'll be 3 police cars, city police cars, not highway patrol, but city police cars, sitting there with 2 police officers in each one of those cars, and I doubt if there's 2,500 people in this whole town.
To me, most of those cities should just combine their efforts and just, there should be just under the sheriff's office. And the reason being is that they would save a lot of money and a lot of taxpayers' money, and it would be much more efficient and money-saving if they would just have one department.
Well, I tend to agree with you, and I think that somebody needs to start looking at these things. We're moving toward a police state instead of dealing with our problems in the home, in the school, in the community. Somebody is looking to deal with it at the wrong end of a nightstick, and that's not going to be the solution to our problems. In fact, I can assure all of you listening and anybody who doubts it that the American people can only be pushed so far. They're proud people, and they have a long history of independent individualism, and there will be a point where they will say, no, this isn't going to happen anymore, and we don't want to reach that point, do we?
I have already reached that point.
Well, you've reached it in a way that is far from the point that I'm talking about. I'm talking about some people just getting disgusted and saying, "Hey, we got to get rid of this." Like old Mao said, through the all power emanates from the barrel of a gun. The purpose of this program is to wake up enough people so we never reach that point.
Right, and I agree with you.
Sheriff Mack is suffering from what I just got over with, folks, and that's why you listen to reruns for about 2 weeks. I lost my voice and was hacking and coughing and everything else. So
I think I'll be okay. I think I yelled too much at my son's basketball game.
well, that's a good place to yell. Before the break, we've got about maybe 2.5 minutes. I'd like for you to just talk about law enforcement from your perspective. I've asked all the questions that I wanted to ask and sort of get your opinion on for our listeners. And I'd like for you to fill this time until the break with just your concept of maybe what's going wrong and maybe what we can do to right it and what the citizens can do to help. Because a lot of people out there want to help do something and they don't know what to do.
Well, and I think that's a very valid question and a point at the same time. Citizens have to be involved in their police department, just like parents should be involved in what's going on at their schools. Families and parents should be involved in what their local police department or sheriff's office is doing. They should call and ask if they can go riding along. Most police departments and sheriff's offices, as we do in our community, have ride-along programs. I know that about a year ago, I gave a talk at the Women's Club in Safford, and the subject of personal safety came up, and about 10 of them asked if I'd take them out and teach them how to shoot a gun. And I did that. And some of these ladies were extremely afraid of guns until I was able to go out there with them. And I recommended that they take a class in firearms. And see, this is what law enforcement should be like. It's a partnership between law enforcement and the people, and they should all be working for the same common goal, and that is to preserve the peace and make our communities so strong morally that prostitution and drugs and gangs simply cannot survive in them because of the strong moral fiber we have worked to achieve between the two of us, that is, the citizen and the police officer. This is really the answer. We keep trying to make the law. Every time something goes wrong, everybody starts screaming, let's make a new law. We need a law. Well, there ought to be a law, damn it. And that's not the thing. We need to go back to the basics. There is already a law, the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution. And if we will simply abide by it and work together to make sure it is being upheld and protected, then our communities will be strengthened. Our communities will be strong because our families are strong. And we have got to support and promote strong family values. And that promotion and perpetuity of family strength needs to happen within our law enforcement and governmental entities. And if we will do that, we will become stronger, and we will beat this domestic enemy that's trying to control and destroy our Constitution.
And you called it right. It is a domestic enemy, and I want to compliment you on the fact that I wasn't expecting you to say what you just said. The answer is truly to go back to the basics, because that's how law enforcement began in this country, as partners with the local citizenry. And if the law enforcement officer found himself backed up against the wall, the citizens came to his aid. He also lived in the community and knew everybody there, and he knew that he had to live there. No matter what he did, he had to face those citizens, so he could not do them wrong. And we're getting away from that. People move around in this country so much, and from city to city, nobody knows anybody, nobody cares about anybody, and nobody thinks about anybody, basically, except themselves. And there's one other rule, one other law, besides the supreme law of the land, and that's the supreme law of the universe. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We'll be right back, folks. Don't go away. That's right, folks. Even though there are a lot of people out there who want to take this country and our land and our property and everything else away from us, this land still, at this moment, belongs to you and me. And the county sheriff is the #1 law enforcement official who represents the people in every county around this country. And I'm going to give you his address right now so that you can write to him. And he's going to challenge the Brady Bill, and we're going to talk about that during this last segment of the Hour of the Time. He's going to take it right up to the Supreme Court if necessary, and he needs money because he's not going to spend county funds on this. Now, I've already assured Sheriff Mack that he will receive $100 from myself, Carolyn, Annie, and Little Pooh. And I want every single family out there listening to contribute $100 to this cause. It's the cause of freedom. It's not the cause of Sheriff Mack. It's not the cause of the state of Arizona. It's not the cause of some mystic, magical thing that somebody's always trying to pull money out of your pockets for. This is the cause of all true Americans who understand the real purpose of the second article and amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America. Our forefathers gave us the right to keep and bear arms because, as it says in the first part of that amendment, a militia being necessary for the preservation of a free state, folks, a free state. Our forefathers literally were telling us that you cannot be free, you cannot have a free state without a militia. The militia is spelled out in the federal law as every able-bodied man or boy between the ages of 17 and 43. Now, state law, in some instances, spells it out even further. But the United States Senate in 1981 passed a resolution stating that the National Guard is not the militia. Neither is any other organized military force. They stated in that resolution clearly, where there is no doubt, the militia consists of the whole people. And the second article and amendment states that it is necessary to a free state, and that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Tell us, Sheriff Mack, what you felt when you heard about the Brady Bill and what you decided to do.
When I finally received a copy of the interpretation from the ATF regarding the Brady Bill, I saw that it was such an abomination and violation of the Constitution and everything our country stands for, that I made up my mind that I was going to have to fight it, even to the death if I have to, in order to make sure that I have not violated my oath of office, and to make sure that no further encroachments upon our freedoms can take place. And I didn't start this as a nationwide or worldwide effort. I simply intended to do this within Graham County, a rather small county in southeastern Arizona. However, I guess after the word got out that I was doing this, I have received a lot of attention nationwide from the press and other people calling, that it has turned into a real mandate, and I intend to fight this, like you said, all the way to the Supreme Court if I have to. And there's just simply no way that I can allow the federal government to usurp power and say that they can run my office. I have far too many other things to do in protecting the people of Graham County to start running background checks on good, common, ordinary, law-abiding citizens. I can't do that. I would have to be ignoring my duties as sheriff. And why the federal government would try to put me in this predicament of having to ignore my oath of office, or to violate my oath of office, and to go against what the people have hired me to do, is beyond me. And I'm not a federal agent, and the government has no authority to ask me or order me to obey this law.
So you have basically decided to challenge this, and you've decided not to enforce it until you get some kind of a concrete ruling. And according to what you've told me, you won't even enforce it then.
Well, I certainly will have a problem doing that. I hope it doesn't come to that. But yes, quite honestly, I simply am a conscientious objector, if you will. And I
like the term "real American" better.
Okay, that's even better. Yes, I like that too. But yeah, I have a very difficult time doing that because, like I said, I would be made a liar, and I just simply think that we already have enough liars in political offices, and I don't want to be one of them.
Now, you're a county sheriff in the state of Arizona, and it doesn't just violate the Second Article and Amendment in the United States Constitution, but it violates the Arizona State Constitution, which, when the state of Arizona became accepted as a state by the United States of America, they approved that Constitution, which means there's nothing wrong with what our Constitution says. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then what does the Arizona State Constitution say about the right of the people to own guns?
Yes, it states in Section 26, and I'm paraphrasing just a little bit. Most of it will be quoted, but it says the right of the individual citizen to keep and bear arms in defense of himself and of the state of Arizona shall not be impaired.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty explicit, but so is the one in the Constitution of the United States. And it seems like people don't read the same dictionary I read or something, because impaired and infringed mean you can't touch it, you can't encroach, you can't change, you can't alter. The only way the federal government can legally do this is if they will remove the Second Amendment from the Constitution first. Then they can start discussing gun control. But there is no debate, no discussion allowed until that Second Amendment is removed.
And the procedure for doing that is spelled out. Now, even if they were to remove the Second Article and Amendment to the federal Constitution, the state Constitution would still stand, and no one would have the authority to change that, because the federal government has no authority over what people do in a state.
That's right, and that's the 10th Amendment of the Bill of Rights or Constitution, which you've just addressed. And not only that, probably the one that, let me quote this, I do have this, and I can quote this, it's right in front of me. It's from a paper I wrote about the constitutional responsibilities of police officers, and it quotes the Miranda decision that was written by Chief Justice Warren back, when was it, the early 60s, regarding the Miranda case, where police officers thought that law enforcement was coming down on them, and that the sky was falling in because we were going to have to read suspects or arrestees their rights. Well, in that decision, there was a lot more in that decision than just having to read rights. And Chief Justice Warren wrote, and I quote, "Where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them." Which means there is no legislation allowed. You can't even discuss the possibility of legislation if it is going to violate the Constitution. And I don't know that much about Justice Warren, but I know he's right on in this particular instance, and that is why the Miranda decision came down the way it did, is that plain and simply, he is telling legislators, you can't touch the rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution.
Now, that's the only and truthful argument that there is, and all of these other arguments are just bullshit running around the flagpole, tying people up in knots while they're chasing their own tail.
Yes, exactly.
It's not about crime in the streets, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
It's not about any of these other scams that they're giving you. It's not about animal rights. It's not about whether you have a right to hunt, like the NRA sends out their applications for new membership, asking you to join to protect your right to hunt. That's all smoke screens. The only true argument is it in the Constitution or is it not? If it is, then
the argument's over.
That's right. It's all over. There is no more argument. And if they want to change it, then they must repeal the Second Article and Amendment to the Constitution, or they must produce another amendment to the Constitution that changes it in some way.
Exactly.
And that would be an extremely difficult thing to do, wouldn't it?
Yes, and I support that, because it is a constitutional right to change the Constitution in that regard. If the people say so, then they need to. But I would never support such a thing. But if it happens, boy, God help us.
Yes, but we would all, as Americans who believe in the Constitution, have to support it if the Constitution was changed in the proper way that's outlined within that document itself for changing it. It is, in fact, a living Constitution, and people like H. Ross Perot, who claim that it's an old, dead document penned by a bunch of doddering old men in powdered wigs over 200 years ago who didn't have any understanding of the modern world, is just as much bullshit as the previous argument.
Yes, that's true.
We call the shots as they lie here on the Hour of the Time, Sheriff Mack.
Yeah, we need to call a spade and quit beating around the bush. I think there's been too much of that, and a lot of people call that political diarrhea, and I certainly don't want to be part of that.
Well, you certainly have my admiration and support, and I can assure you, you will have the 100% support of the unorganized Arizona militia, which it does exist in large numbers, is a true patriotic body of men who exist for the preservation and protection of the Constitution.
The Arizona Constitution gives the sheriff the authority and power to organize posses or militias, and even command the aid of every able-bodied person within his county to aid him in doing his duties as sheriff.
Now, in Arizona, that has been exercised quite frequently, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, especially recently with Sheriff Arpaio from Phoenix, from Maricopa County. And I know him well. In fact, I was just meeting with him yesterday, and he is very constitutionally oriented, and he, even though he was brought up in the DEA, where he retired with the federal government, he has taken his duties as sheriff very seriously, and I certainly commend him for that, too.
Well, that's wonderful. Folks, I know I get letters from you people. Some of you call me and you say, gee, I sure wish John Wayne was around. I want to remind you all that John Wayne was an actor. John Wayne portrayed the kind of man whom is talking to you, who's the guest on our show tonight. An unassuming, strong man who understands the principles and ideals that this country was founded upon, and also understands that if he's not ready and willing to back those principles and ideals up and even die for them if necessary, that this is all just a big joke and we might as well just rip it all down and go home and play with our marbles. You shouldn't be looking for John Wayne. You shouldn't be looking for Henry Fonda or any of these other movie people that you always keep saying you wish would. I wish John Wayne was back. John Wayne never did anything except make good movies, folks, and occasionally he did a benefit that helped somebody in need. The people who really do things in this country are people like Sheriff Mack, and you need to get behind them. I'm going to give you his address. I want you to send him a generous donation, and if you're a family, send him $100. My family is sending him $100, and we cannot afford it either, folks, so I don't want to hear that crap. If you care about this country, do it. Send your contribution to the Graham County Sheriff, Richard Mack. Richard Mack, 523 10th Avenue, Safford, Safford, Arizona, 85546. That's the Graham County Sheriff, Richard Mack, 523 10th Avenue, Safford, spelled Safford, Arizona, 85546. Sheriff Mack, who should they make the check out to?
At this point, it's just going to have to be to me, because there is no other person yet that is in charge of doing anything, and there's no name for the coalition or whatever, so yeah, it's just going to have to be to me at this point.
Okay, just make it out to Richard Mack. He's going to spend this money on taking this Brady bill, this Brady law, it is now, into court, and he's going to challenge it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And even if he loses up there, I understand that he's not going to enforce it. In fact, he cannot be made to force it. Is there any way that they could shove this down your throat and force you to enforce this Brady bill in your county?
I don't see how. The federal government tries to do a lot of things and shoving things down people's throats, so I guess they could always try it. It would be another usurpation of power. But I guess they could always try it, but at the same time, I can always fight back.
Well, there you have it, folks. And Sheriff Mack, I really admire you. Out of all the people in this country, you were the first to stand up. You're not the only one. There's another sheriff in the state of Montana who has made a public statement that he is going to refuse to enforce the Brady Bill. I will send you his...
I think that's Sheriff Prince, isn't it?
That's right, Sheriff Prince.
Yes, I've seen a news article released in his hometown. And yeah, I really admire him too. I'd like to meet him.
Well, we'll figure out some way to get you guys in touch, and we're going to be sending you a stack of documents that you won't believe that will prove to you and anybody else who goes through them. And these are official government documents, legislation, congressional record, State Department documents that prove that this disarmament of the American people is an old plan to unite the world in a one-world government under the United Nations, and that, my friend, is treason. Thank you very much, Sheriff Mack, for being a part of the Hour of the Time tonight, and I know you're going to get a lot of donations from our listening audience, and I'm going to keep sticking them with a pin so that they won't forget about this.
Thank you, Bill, and God bless us.
And God bless you. And folks, all of you out there listening, God bless you too, and good night.